Creative Babble.
For 2 years straight, Alicia Lockhart says that she was tormented by a necrophiliac who went by the username Fetish Master. LaDonna Humphrey was convinced that the person sending the messages was the porn director who sexually assaulted Alicia 12 years prior.
I believed my computer or my Google Docs were hacked because there were things in the text messages sometimes that from the fake phone numbers about stuff that nobody would know about me unless they had gotten into my personal accounts or been reading my conversations, especially my conversations with LaDonna. Sometimes messages would come through about what we were talking about that very moment. It was just this constant state of paranoia that I was in. I had to wipe my computer almost once a month and change all my passwords all the time.
She must have asked herself, why am I researching this community again? It's not worth it. But she says that LaDonna kept encouraging her. Here's LaDonna Humphrey.
No, you cannot feel bad. He is a death fetish producer. He drugged you. And we don't know what else he did to you. Don't you dare feel bad. You stand firm.
But then after years of constant harassment, Alicia made a pretty shocking discovery. LaDonna Humphrey was logged in under the username Fetish Master, the same username who Alicia says terrorized her for years.
How long have you been Fetish Master?
I'm a little scared right now, actually. Actually, a lot scared. I am not Fetish Master. I promise you.
She doesn't explain it at all. She just says she's scared. She doesn't know why it looks that way. Her computer must have been hacked. She's not Death Fetish Master. She needs to check with her husband to see if it's him. She'll get back to me. It was just the weirdest response.
Okay, so here's the question. So you obviously you confronted her about this, and that was the end of the relationship, or?
Well, I confronted her about it, and to be honest with you, I was kind of in shock. So I hung in there for, I think, maybe 4 more months after that. It was really hard.
If LaDonna is really Fetish Master, then why would she do all this? Alicia says it's for fame and recognition. It's true, LaDonna Humphrey does kind of talk about herself as a celebrity of sorts. I've listened to audios of LaDonna Humphrey talking about the hassles of being recognized while buying ice cream. She apologized for complaining, saying it's hard to adjust to her new celebrity life, even though she adds, quote, "This is everything I've ever wanted." But could somebody be so hungry for fame that they would actually create fake accounts and play mind games with their co-host just to generate content? I mean, that just sounds so far-fetched. If these allegations are true, we need to scrutinize the other cases that she's worked on to verify the validity of her investigation. LaDonna Humphrey built her entire true crime career on one case, the Melissa Witt case. Almost everything written about it is based on her reporting. If she truly terrorized Alicia just to create podcast content, is her reporting on the Melissa Witt case as accurate as we believe it to be? Today, I'm going to take a closer look at that case. I'm Javier Leiva, and this is Pretend. Stories about real people pretending to be someone else. Are you craving a good mystery or looking for an escape from reality? Well, I got the perfect game for you. You should consider playing this new game called June's Journey. You've heard me talk about it here on the show before, but I love it because, it gives me a break from reality and from doom scrolling, and I could actually still play a detective, but all in this beautifully produced game. In June's journey, you could find hidden clues, solve mind-twisting mysteries from the Roaring Twenties. Objects are hidden in parlors of New York or in the sidewalks of Paris. But it's a great story, too, because each chapter reveals a new part of the story. You're trying to uncover the scandalous hidden family secret behind June's sister's murder. Lately, I've been chatting and playing with and against other players by joining the Detective Club. So discover your inner detective when you download June's Journey for free today on iOS and Android. You got mystery, danger, romance. What else do you want?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you the whole story.
Patti Rush is a crime victim advocate at Remember Every Victim and Missing Persons, or REVAMP for short.
Our organization, REVAMP, we're based out of Portsmouth, Arkansas. Basically, our liaisons between law enforcement and the families. And I've said this many times, and I truly mean it. Our families mean everything to us.
REVAMP is an organization with one mission. They help victims' families communicate with law enforcement to help advance unresolved criminal cases. Patti Rush and her organization have deep ties to various police agencies in the area. But there's one case that hits closer than most, and that is a Melissa Witt case.
I had spent a lot of time talking to Melissa. Melissa was the same age as one of my children. And so, I just kind of bonded with her. She would tell me her personal problems. She would tell me about school. We would just talk.
When Melissa Witt disappeared from that Arkansas bowling alley in 1994, Patti Rush says that she felt compelled to help.
Everybody in my family, my children, thought that I should get involved in this because I've been an advocate for a long time and because I knew a lot about her case and a lot about her, and I followed it very closely.
There was someone else interested in this case. That was LaDonna Humphrey.
She had posted on Facebook that she was digging into the Melissa Witt case and that she had taken it on as a project. From the very get-go, she starts telling me that she has full access to the case file, which I thought was a little odd because I've been an advocate for a long time, but I had no reason to doubt her. So, I believed her. I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker.
Like Patti said, LaDonna claimed that she had extraordinary access to the Melissa Witt case files and all the evidence, which is highly unusual because when a criminal case is open and active, the public is not privy to that information. In fact, journalists generally cannot access case files or evidence in an active and open criminal investigation. That's because this information is usually protected to ensure the integrity of the individuals involved and to maintain the fairness of any future legal proceedings. But that didn't seem to be the case with LaDonna Humphrey.
And then she starts telling me, she got the diary and maybe I should bring it home and look at it.
Yes, you heard right. LaDonna Humphrey told Patti that she had access to Melissa Witt's diary, which was submitted into evidence.
And then she starts telling me, she got the diary and maybe I should bring it home and look at it.
Patti has forwarded me hundreds of screenshots of communications between her and LaDonna, and it was clear that LaDonna was eager to show off the evidence.
And I declined because I wasn't really sure why that she would have access to that diary, and I didn't really think it should be taken away from the police department because it was evidence. But she would take pictures and send to me. So I thought that was kind of odd, but it still wasn't enough to raise a lot of red flags. So she calls me one night. It was in the middle of the afternoon. LaDonna calls me and says, I need you to come over here. I've got a document out of that file. I didn't mean to take it. I don't know what to do. We drive over there, and it was a letter from the crime scene investigator with the time of death for Melissa. Now, this was something that has never been let out. And so she hands me the document. She says, look, I took it. I didn't mean to. I said, you need to take it back. She said, I will, but I have to wait till I can get a chance to take it back. So that was the first time I really knew of her to steal or to take something. I'm not going to say steal, but to take something from the case file.
But then there was also the video of Melissa Witt's decomposing body after police discovered it in the Ozarks National Forest.
And then finally, she sends me a link to the crime scene video, the unedited, over an hour long crime scene video. And it was where they had found Melissa's body. And it devastated me. It really did. Because for one thing, I knew Melissa, and it was very degrading.
Not to get graphic, but the upper half of Melissa's body was decomposed all the way down to the bone.
It was just not something that should be put out to the public. And it was on YouTube. So I reached out to a captain over at the Fort Smith Police Department, and I let him know. At first he said, well, there's no way somebody could have done that. And I said, well, here's the link.
And if you're thinking, Javier, what if Patti misunderstood? There's no way that police would allow LaDonna to post sensitive case footage on YouTube, right? Don't believe me? Here's LaDonna's own words talking about the Melissa Witt case and her access to police files in her book titled Connected by Fate. By the way, I have to warn you, LaDonna's books read like a suspense thriller, and a corporate PowerPoint presentation had a very verbose baby. It's very wordy and over the top. In her book, LaDonna writes that her involvement was, quote, sanctioned by the highest echelons of the Fort Smith Police Department. Oh, come on, give me a break. The highest echelons of the Fort Smith Police Department entrusted a civilian investigator to upload a YouTube video? Are we supposed to believe that the police department's top brass is so short-staffed that they outsourced a crucial task to a random person? Also, is anyone really buying that the police department gave a thumbs up to a YouTube channel as a, quote, pinnacle of modern investigative techniques? Here's another excerpt from her book, Connected by Fate. I propose an innovative plan to ensure that the footage was not only accessible, but also reviewable by the key stakeholders. A private YouTube channel became the chosen medium, a secure digital space where barriers to access were meticulously dismantled. Wow, you mean the same platform where cat videos and makeup tutorials live? Oh boy. LaDonna goes on to explain. The digital repository was no ordinary YouTube channel. It was a fortress of confidentiality. Its gates opened only to those who were directly involved in peeling back the layers of the Witt case. YouTube, a fortress of confidentiality? Oh, sure, because nothing says secure and confidential like a YouTube channel. Even if she made the video private, anyone can share a link, and it's hardly a fortress. It's freaking YouTube, man. Well, anyway, so she goes on to say, the updated footage was accessible only to those directly involved in the Witt case. The agreement was clear and binding. The content, both the videos and still images derived from them, was strictly exclusive to my documentary team and law enforcement personnel. Again, restricted unless you have a link, which I do. I have the link, and fortunately, that video has been taken down. LaDonna even goes as far as naming the police captain who gave her the all clear. Captain Wendell Sampson of the Fort Smith Police Department. Here's Patti Rush again.
I asked him about that after I found out that she wrote that in her third book. And let me tell you what his reply was. I haven't read her book, but these claims have been circulating for years. I was not part of the process then or now. She spelled my name wrong, and I have no idea what she's talking about. Okay, I have that screenshot as well.
I've seen the screenshots with Patti's communications with Captain Sampson, and he wrote, we had to go back and completely inventory every piece of evidence relating to the case to determine if the original video or the evidence was missing. We were able to determine how Arkansas One Media obtained a copy and how it came back to be uploaded online. We had the video removed and contacted the media group to make sure no additional copies were in circulation. It was a lot of work, but I think we got it under control and placed the safeguards against it happening again. Patti tells me that she became increasingly concerned about LaDonna's access to Melissa Witt's case files.
We meet her in the parking lot, not far from the Fort Smith Police Department. She opened her door and she says, I'm sorry, my car's so junky, you can't get in. But here's the document, and I don't know what to do. And I look at the document, and it's from the crime scene of the medical examiner's office. It's a fax that has gone to the prosecuting attorney at the time. And at the bottom, he had written a note that if they are to call, there no one's to talk to him but him. And she believed that he was maybe orchestrating some kind of cover-up. That's not the way I took it. I took it that it was very important information that they had because they had established a close proximity of the time of death, which was not what we thought it was. And I handed it back to her and I said, you've got to take this back. And she said, I will, but I can't just go back up there and admit that I took it. I have to wait until I can slide it back in without them knowing it. Okay. Well, then after that, she started sending me screenshots of documents out of that case file.
And how do you know those documents are real and that she didn't make them up?
The one that I was handling that day, I truly believe it was real. The documents that she sent me, I showed them to the ex-prosecuting attorney, and he said those could very well be real.
I reached out to Fort Smith PD to get an official response. I sent them a list of questions, and here are their answers. Has your department ever allowed LaDonna Humphrey to read Melissa Witt's diary? They responded, yes, she read the diary while in the criminal investigation briefing room at department headquarters in 2020, while being supervised by myself. This is Eric Mitchell, the Public Information Officer, and personnel from the Criminal Investigations Division. We cannot speak to the particulars of any prior exposure that Miss LaDonna Humphrey had with the diary, as those would have occurred under a previous administration's purview. Then I asked, how many times has she been able to access the diary? They wrote back, at least twice, but only under the current administration. How did Arkansas One Media get access to the video showing the discovery of Melissa Witt's body? They wrote, an agreement with former Detective Troy Williams, who was having evidence digitized by them in 2015. My final question was that LaDonna Humphrey told me that Fort Smith PD asked her to digitize the video. Is that true? Their response? The detective working the case prior to the current administration made that decision in 2015. As you can see, LaDonna is not making that up. She did have unprecedented access to the Melissa Witt case files. But why? It's clear that the Fort Smith Police Department is trying to separate themselves from the previous administration, leading me to believe that LaDonna Humphrey may have had access to the case files multiple times, but they're not willing to confirm that. I've requested a second interview with Fort Smith PD so that I could actually ask them follow-up questions to this. If they respond, you'll hear their answers in a future episode.
She had me so terrified that I was by myself most of the time. I was just scared to leave home, because I was getting all these terrible text messages, and it's like no matter what I did, they just kept getting worse and worse and worse. After the book came out, several people messaged me and said, hey, I think that this lady is trying to say that it's you, and it's about this time that you turned her in for posting the crime scene video on YouTube. She started attacking me as soon as I turned in that she had posted the video. It was March 4th of 2019.
And that's when the harassment started?
That's when the harassment started. Mm-hmm. It's a couple of days afterwards. I turned it in on March the 4th at 12:22 p.m. and it was probably March the 6th when I started getting some bad stuff.
At first, it was silly, taunting. One message read, make the cake, make the dough, make it round, let it go. Plant the seeds, milk the cow, cover titties with a dow. Goat, boat, buffalo, whore, don't let LaDonna score. Unquote. Patti responded, why do you have issues with LaDonna, or even me for that matter? The mysterious texter responded, twats with guns, twats with brains, twats that tried to take the reins.
I was just scared to leave home. Because just nasty, vulgar. And it would happen. So many things would happen to you so fast that you didn't have time to think about one until something else would happen.
Another text read, do you know the Muffin Man? He's crispy and sweet and very good to eat. By the way, the Muffin Man is a very twisted nursery rhyme based on the urban legend claiming that a baker named Frederick Thomas Linwood, who lived in Drury Lane in London, lured children into a dark alley by tying baked goods such as English muffins onto a string in order to murder them. Patti's phone could not stop buzzing. A series of messages contained the word muffin every few seconds. Muffin, muffin, muffin. At the time, Patti believed that it was Melissa Witt's killer warning her. Tell the sleuth of the year that the files she needs to finish will be buried just north of Chester Exit. Look for the rock. This text is referencing Chester, Arkansas. You see, you take the Chester exit coming from Fort Smith to locate the rock where Melissa's body was found in the Ozarks National Forest. So who is the sleuth? Presumably LaDonna.
I was getting these messages almost 10, 20 times a day, and they were always signed by the Muffin Man. And I found out later on, I had a lot of reason to believe that it was LaDonna that was actually sending these messages. She calls me one day and she said, "Hey, I'm at a Mexican restaurant and a waiter came over to me and gave me a message from the Muffin Man." I said, "Who gave him the message?" She said, "Well, he doesn't speak English." And I said, "Okay, well, can you get a description of the man that gave the message?" And she went in this long spiel about, she gave me all these reasons. No, she couldn't do that. And I remember one time I went into an RV park at Anadarko, Oklahoma. And about the time we pulled in, she called and I said, "Hey, can I call you back? Because we're pulling into the Anadarko RV park." And at that point, nobody in my family, nobody knew we were going to the Anadarko RV park. So a little while later, I get a message from this unknown number, and it said, "How's my River Bend RV park troublemaker?" She had me so convinced it was him.
But it wasn't just Patti getting harassed. LaDonna told her that she too was being a target.
Somebody stole her, the whole Missy Witt case. In fact, she told me that 2 or 3 different times. One, they took it out of her house, and then 2 times they took it out of her car. And I thought it was really odd that she had the whole case file. And then she told me that she was getting gas one day and a guy walked up to her and said, "Hey, you're the Missy Witt woman," and sold her purse and took off. And then one day she sent me a message that somebody had left $7,000 in cash on her windshield, her husband's windshield, and her daughter and son's windshield, which amounts to what? $28,000. Okay. And then she calls me one day and says somebody dug 3 holes in the backyard, put crosses on them, but she failed to take pictures. She didn't have any security camera working at the time. The very next day, somebody naked came to her door and terrified her daughter, but the cameras didn't work that day. I did for a long time, and it was so many things that it's like you would start thinking about one thing and then something else would happen. And so you would, divert your attention to something new. My theory is that because that entity allowed it, and it would look bad on that entity. And so they were protecting that entity. And I can't say that I wouldn't probably try to protect my organization, especially when you're talking about the Fort Smith Police Department. They're trying really hard to get the public's approval and their trust.
In a way, Patti is what LaDonna aspires to be. Her organization, REVAMP, is working with families who suffered great loss and don't know how to navigate the criminal justice system. Patti tells me that her team is helping families connect with police so that they don't become another case that gets filed in a cabinet somewhere.
We mostly work missing persons and unsolved homicides. Right now, Arkansas has over 2,100 unsolved homicides on the records, and we figure there's probably 5,000 plus.
Patti Rush tells me that she doesn't need a book or a podcast or a documentary to drive her passion. She says she's perfectly satisfied working in the background for these families. LaDonna has made her disdain for Patti Rush very clear. In her book, LaDonna references a woman with a vendetta against her who accused her of stealing documents from the evidence room, specifically Melissa Witt's body video.
So book 3 came out, and she writes this whole chapter on this woman, and that everybody believes is me.
In the book, the woman who turns her in is named Sandy.
Sandy is just known to just be a liar, and you can't believe anything she says. She says that she was jealous of her. I've never been jealous of her in my life. Never. I'm not the jealous person. You can ask anybody that knows me. I'm just not a jealous person. But basically, her bottom line is that I was just jealous of her, and I want to try to sabotage her because she does not want, Sandy does not want to see justice for Melissa Witt. That's far from true.
Patti tells me that LaDonna also takes credit for things that Patti has done.
So I have these letters. They were from Charlie Ray Vines.
Charles Ray Vines was a Fort Smith convicted serial killer who raped and fatally stabbed 2 elderly women. He was caught attacking a 3rd victim.
He was known as the River Valley Killer. He was into necrophilia. He was into a lot of horrible things.
There's never been an official suspect in Melissa Witt's murder, but a few names have floated around, including Charles Ray Vines, the River Valley Killer. Pay attention to the timeline. On April 10th, 1993, Vines broke into an 89-year-old woman's house, savagely beat her and raped her. Here's Fort Smith detective J.C. Ryder describing the scene on an Oxygen documentary.
At one point, she either did lose consciousness or pretended to lose consciousness. And at that point, it seemed like the attacker thought she was dead. And that's probably what saved her life.
2 months later, June 1993, Vines murdered a 58-year-old woman. I've seen the crime photos. Horrific is an understatement. I've never seen anything like it.
If you looked up above the bed, there were bloody, smeared handprints, and also there was some kind of stains on the walls, wet stain.
It's clear that someone had urinated at the scene near the body.
A few months later, Melissa Witt disappears from the bowling alley parking lot in December of 1993. 8 months after Melissa's body was discovered, Charles Ray Vines brutally kills another woman. She was 74 years old. Now, you might be thinking, Melissa Witt doesn't really match the pattern or the profile. She's young, she vanishes in public. The other two women were older and they were attacked at home. But check this out. One day, the parents of a 16-year-old girl walked in on Charles Ray Vines attacking their daughter. She had been stabbed and raped, but somehow managed to survive. All these incidents happened between a 5 to 8 year time period. He's certainly someone that police should look into. Here's Patti Rush again.
Charles Ray Vines killed an elderly woman over on Jenny Lind, just real close to where the bowling alley is. And this was in 1994. So he kills a lady at the end of 93. A woman was found dead. She had been sexually assaulted after she died. Another lady had been attacked, but was left for dead, but she was blind and she could not identify him. Now, those two attacks happened in 94 and 95 at the same time that Melissa was taken from the bowling alley. Then he moved to Dripping Springs, and an elderly woman in Dripping Springs is murdered and attacked and sexually assaulted after she's been killed. He lived within walking distance of her, which I knew that Charlie Vines was an avid pool player. And where Melissa was taken, they had a lot of pool tables, and it was a bowling alley, but it also had pool tables. And he always carried a case with him had his cue sticks in it. He would actually carry this to work with him in case they had lunch somewhere he could play pool during lunch. Charles Ray Vines had a cabin on that road where her body was found. Charles Ray Vines stayed in a cabin that was just on north of there on the same road.
Patti told me that Charles Ray Vines was always someone she considered a person of interest, so she would write him letters while he was in prison.
So she knew that I had gotten these letters from Charlie Ray Vines.
She being LaDonna.
And in her book, she says that she got letters from him too. She never shares the letters. She puts a transcript of the letters, but they don't sound anything like the letters that I received from him. They were very praising her and just, it was all about her, what a great job she was doing and how noble she was. And so I was told that the agencies in Fort Smith that are investigating this case wanted those letters and were not able to get them because she's misplaced them. That's always her story. I've never seen anybody misplace so many things. I think I've heard, her emails got hacked, her Facebook got hacked, her phones got stolen, you name it.
Apart from LaDonna recounting Vines' letters in her book, I haven't seen the actual letter, just a cropped version with his signature. Unlike LaDonna, Patti Rush's letters from Vines haven't been stolen or hacked. In one correspondence, Vines wrote to Patti Rush, "Dear Mrs. Rush, I'm writing to inform you that I do not wish to write or talk about my cases or my thoughts on any other case. I do this because people have taken and twisted my words or have tried to profit off of me and my writings. I hope you honor my wishes and please do not contact me anymore. Thank you, Charles." In LaDonna's book and even on her podcast, she's all but ruled out Charles Ray Vines as a suspect in Melissa Witt's case. She says that detectives have interviewed Vines for days and he never confessed to the murder. Plus, she says that Melissa Witt's official cause of death was asphyxiation by strangulation with no signs of trauma. So she concludes that this just isn't Charles Ray Vines' signature move. Here's LaDonna talking about Vines on her podcast, Extinguished.
The case isn't solved and we could be wrong, and maybe there's evidence out there that will prove that it's Vines. But based on the leading expert in the case, which is J.C. Ryder, and based on my own personal investigation, I tend to believe that Vines was not involved.
Even though in her book she says he was ruled out, nobody knows how he was ruled out.
So why would LaDonna, who has devoted her entire media career covering the Witt case, not even entertain the Vine theory? Does she have someone else in mind? There's a lot of circumstances, like you described, how close he lived, his pool hobby, she gets taken from a bowling alley. A lot of these things line up very well. But she conveniently rules him out as a suspect. Why do you think?
Do you remember Larry Swearingen in Texas?
No.
He killed a young girl and he was executed for her murder. But LaDonna called me one day, and this is exactly what she said. We need to attach Melissa's case file to Larry Swearingen. And here's the reason. He's getting a lot of publicity from the Innocence Project, and we can attach Melissa's case file to his name, and we can ride that media hype. And I said, but is there any proof that he was ever in this area? She goes, it doesn't matter. She even tried to get me to go down there and interview him. And I said, he was never in this area. I can't ever find anybody that can prove to me that he was in the Arkansas area at the time.
LaDonna has since moved on to other suspects. In fact, she's currently zeroing in on one man in particular.
Now she claims that she has identified the real killer, and he's been showing off Melissa's Mickey Mouse watch. But she never gives the name. She never gives the name of the man, but everyone knows who she's talking about. And we'll talk more about that in an upcoming episode. But in the meantime, it's clear that Patti Rush and LaDonna Humphrey are at odds with one another. Both women claim that they want justice for Melissa Witt, but it seems that they each have their own motivations. I really was hoping she would solve the case. I really was. I want to see justice for Melissa Witt. I really, really do want to see justice for her. There's something about me that just really gets under her skin. I don't know what it is. Other than I just have so much information on her because I was so stupid for so long.
Next time on Pretend.
I wonder why they're trying to make me out to be the super villain and you, I don't know, I don't like this.
We're going to dig into LaDonna's past. Has she been accused of this behavior prior to being a celebrity true crime author?
The fact that this woman has terrorized so many lives and has ruined so many people and is still out there doing it is just mind-boggling.
This episode was written by me, Javier Leyva, and it was produced by Allison Byrne and edited by the talented Punith Shenoy with the Podcast Pundits. I want to thank all my new Patreon supporters and my new Apple Pretend Plus supporters. I mean, you guys are awesome. Thank you for supporting the show. For those of you who are itching to hear the rest of the series, the first 4 episodes are already up on Patreon and Apple Podcasts Pretend Plus, with episode 5 coming up as early as tomorrow. If you're listening to this on release date, it might already be up. You know, this is my 200th episode of Pretend, and 200 episodes, that's a lot, okay? And that's not even including the bonus stuff. And in my 200 episodes and 7 years doing this podcast, I have yet to be attacked online by someone I've been covering. But hey, here we are, right? LaDonna Humphrey has gone online on social media and on her website trying to discredit the people who have come forward on my show to talk about her. Remember, I am talking about stuff that's been documented in the courts, documented with police records, screenshots that I have seen myself, voice memos that I've heard with my own ears. And LaDonna is going out there trying to muddy things up. Her defense right now is to post the criminal records and any dirt she could find about the people who have come on this show. That's her strategy. Her strategy is, don't look at me. Look at all these awful people who are saying these things about me. She even wrote on her website that she was going to expose some things about me. This is who we are dealing with, folks. And I want to give LaDonna a fair shake. You will hear her interview coming up later in the show. I'm actually working on those episodes right now, and they'll be up shortly on Patreon and Pretend Plus, and you'll get to hear her side of the story. I also spoke to many of her friends, so we're going to cover both sides, but if you want to hear what LaDonna and her friends are saying, I posted a bonus episode on Patreon and Pretend Plus. It's a doozy. Enjoy. All right, that's it for today. See you next week.
Creative Babble.